My name is Emily Carter. I'm 32 years old and I work as an emergency room nurse at St. Mary's Hospital in Dallas, Texas. What I'm about to share with you changed everything I thought I knew about life, faith, and purpose. This is my story about how one night in the ER led me to Islam. I grew up in a typical American Christian family. We went to church on Sundays, celebrated Christmas and Easter, but honestly, faith wasn't something I ever thought deeply about. It was just part of our routine. After high school, I went straight into nursing school because I wanted to help people. That desire to care for others was always inside me, even as a little girl. By the time I was 28, I'd been working in the ER for 6 years. I'd seen everything: car accidents, heart attacks, gunshot wounds, overdoses. You name it, I'd dealt with it. The ER is chaos. It's loud, fast-paced, and honestly, it can be emotionally draining. You learn to build walls around your heart because if you don't, you'll break down every single shift. I became good at my job, really good, but somewhere along the way, I lost something. I lost that spark, that sense of meaning I had when I first started. My life had become a cycle. Wake up, go to work, come home exhausted, sleep, repeat. I was single, no kids, and honestly, I felt empty. I'd look around at my colleagues, at the patients, at everyone, and I'd wonder, is this it? Is this all there is to life? Work until you're old and then die. I never talked about these feelings with anyone. I just pushed them down and kept going. Then came March 15th, 2023. It was a Wednesday night around 9 p.m. The ER was packed as usual. Ambulances were coming in one after another. I was assigned to bed 12, and the paramedics were bringing in an elderly man, maybe in his 70s. His name was Ibrahim Hassan. He'd collapsed at home and his family called 911. When they wheeled him in, I could see he was in pain, struggling to breathe. But there was something different about him. His eyes. Despite the pain, there was this calmness in his eyes that I'd never seen before in a patient in distress. We got him stabilized, ran tests, and it turned out he had a severe case of pneumonia with complications. He needed to be admitted immediately. As I was setting up his IV and monitoring his vitals, he looked at me and said in a weak voice, "Nurse, what time is it?" I told him it was 9:15 p.m. He closed his eyes for a moment, and I could see his lips moving, like he was saying something to himself. Then he asked me, "Is there a place where I can wash? I need to pray." I was surprised. This man could barely breathe. He was hooked up to oxygen, monitors beeping everywhere, and he was asking about washing and praying. I gently told him, "Sir, you need to rest. You're very sick. You can pray from your bed." He smiled weakly and said, "You're right. Allah knows my situation. I will pray as I am." I watched as he turned his head slightly toward what I later learned was the direction of Mecca, and despite all the tubes and wires, despite the pain, he began to pray. His lips moved silently, and his hands, though weak, made small gestures. I stood there, frozen. In 6 years of working in the ER, I'd seen people cry, scream, curse God, beg for their lives, but I'd never seen someone in critical condition stop to pray with such peace. After he finished, he opened his eyes and saw me still standing there. He must have noticed the look on my face because he said, "I'm sorry if I worried you, nurse. Prayer is our connection to God. No matter what happens to this body, my soul needs that connection." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded and continued my work. But his words stayed with me. Over the next 3 days, Ibrahim remained in the hospital. I wasn't assigned to his floor, but during my breaks I found myself going up to check on him. I told myself it was just professional concern, but deep down I knew it was something else. I was curious. His family was always there. His wife, his children, his grandchildren. They took turns staying with him, and every time I passed by his room I heard them talking softly, laughing sometimes, praying together. On the 3rd day, I went to his room during my lunch break. His daughter was there, a woman about my age, wearing a headscarf. She smiled at me warmly, and offered me some food they'd brought from home. I politely declined at first, but she insisted. "Please, you've been taking such good care of my father. It's the least we can do." So I sat down and ate with them. The food was delicious, some kind of rice dish with chicken and spices I'd never tasted before. Ibrahim was awake and feeling much better. He asked me about myself, where I was from, if I had family. I told him I grew up in Texas, that my parents lived in Houston, and that I'd been a nurse for 6 years. Then he asked me a question that caught me off guard. "Emily, do you believe in God?" I hesitated. I said, "I was raised Christian, but honestly, I don't think about it much anymore." He nodded slowly and said, "May I ask why?" I don't know why, but I opened up to this stranger. Maybe it was because he was so kind, so genuine. I told him about how empty I felt, how life seemed meaningless, just a cycle of work and sleep. I told him about the things I'd seen in the ER, the suffering, the deaths, and how it made me question if there was really a God who cared. He listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Emily, I understand your pain. I've lived 73 years, and I've seen suffering too. I've lost people I loved. I've faced hardships. But let me tell you something. The emptiness you feel, that void inside you, it's not because life has no meaning. It's because you've disconnected from the one who gives life meaning. We were created to worship God, to know Him, to love Him. When we forget that, when we live only for this world, we feel lost." His words hit me like a wave. I felt tears forming in my eyes, and I quickly wiped them away. He continued, "In Islam, we believe that this life is a test. The suffering, the joy, the struggles, they're all part of that test. But we're not alone. God is closer to us than our own jugular vein. He hears every prayer, sees every tear, knows every pain. And when we turn to Him, when we submit to Him, we find peace. That's what Islam means. Submission to God and finding peace through that submission." I sat there speechless. His daughter handed me a tissue, and I realized I was crying. I'd been holding so much inside for so long, and this man, this patient I'd only known for 3 days, had somehow reached into my heart and touched something I didn't even know was there. Before I left that day, Ibrahim gave me a book. It was an English translation of the Quran. He said, "Read it with an open heart. Don't read it to judge or criticize. Read it as if God is speaking directly to you, because He is." I took the book, thanked him, and went back to my shift, but I couldn't stop thinking about our conversation. That night, when I got home, instead of collapsing into bed like I usually did, I sat down and opened the Quran. I started reading from the beginning. I read about Adam and Eve, about the prophets, about God's mercy and justice. I read verses that spoke directly to my heart. One verse in particular struck me. It said, "Indeed, in the remembrance of God, do hearts find rest." That was it. That was exactly what I'd been missing. Rest, peace, purpose. Over the next few weeks, I couldn't put the book down. I read it every night, and during my breaks at work, I'd research Islam online. I learned about the 5 pillars, about prayer, fasting, charity, pilgrimage. I learned about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his life. The more I learned, the more everything made sense. Islam wasn't just a religion, it was a complete way of life, a guide for how to live with purpose, compassion, and connection to God. But I was scared. I was scared of what my family would think, what my friends would say, what my